Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. Our guest today is the first woman to found a political party in the Arab world. Tracy Chamoun, welcome to the program. You are the president of the Liberal Democrats in Lebanon and a member of one of Lebanon's most famous and tragic political dynasties, the granddaughter of former President Camille Chamoun and the daughter of Danny Chamoun, who was murdered with his family in the Lebanese civil war. You're the author of the book The Blood of Peace, just published by Lattes, the publishing company in France, so no English publication yet. The subtitle of that book is The Future of the West is Being Played Out in Lebanon. That's my rough translation. We'll come to that later. Yes. I want to start on a more personal note. When I read this book, it felt to me as though figuratively, you'd been killed twice. Once was by the actual murder of your father, and secondly, the refusal of your own uncle to support you after that murder.
There was many times that I've been killed during my past. The death of my country during the Civil War destroyed me for a long time, and that culminated in the assassination of my family, a very brutal assassination that was in fact not part of the amnesty general that was issued or declared after the war. And of course, there's been many betrayals and a lot of disappointments along the way, but I don't think that one dies from these sorts of suffering. One has to emerge either better or transformed, certainly.
We're just seeing those pictures there of your father and his second wife and their two children, aged 7 and 5, who were killed, who were murdered as well in 1990. And you mentioned what did you mean? It wasn't part of the general amnesty after the war.
It was such a heinous crime. There were 11 crimes that were not included as part of the general amnesty after the war, and this was one of the crimes. And so, therefore, the person who was found guilty of having committed it would then we would be able to prosecute that person.
You talk a lot about the perpetrator, Armen Georgian, the militia leader who was found guilty. He was convicted by a court of ordering the assassination.
Convicted, sentenced to death, and it was commuted to life. He was then pardoned 12 years later. It was a political pardon.
How close have you reached? How close have you got to forgiving Armen Georgian?
I don't know if it's about forgiveness. It's about overcoming tragedy. I think one has to forgive one's own life and become strong as a result of the suffering that one endures in life. I think forgiveness requires that a perpetrator or somebody who's committed a crime against somebody asks for forgiveness, and this hasn't happened. So it's impossible to forgive in absentia. But as far as my life is concerned, I no longer wish to carry any hatred or loathing or any more suffering in my heart. So the forgiveness is really towards my own self.
It must be very hard, though, to come to terms with it when your uncle is allied with effectively the man who killed your father.
That's a very difficult reality to come to terms with, and it's one of the reasons why I also came back to Lebanon to resume my political work there and to provide another alternative to all the people who love my family who don't really want to follow my uncle in this particular path.
We're just watching some more recent pictures of Armen Georgian there. You talk a lot about how his political revival has to do with historical revisionism in Lebanon, and you seem to put that against what you say is needed for a catharsis, which is to look at the Lebanon civil war with all its ugly truth. Do you think historical revisionism is winning at the moment?
I think historical revisionism is part of our culture overall. That's why it's very important to be somebody who carries the truth and wishes to transmit the truth at many levels. There are many people who live through terrible conditions and are bearers of the truth. And I consider that book, the book that you're holding in your hand, as a testimony to that truth, as a reminder of what happened. We lived through terrible times in the war in Lebanon. And if we don't learn from our past, from our mistakes, we're not going to evolve into a better society. So that was really the purpose of the book, to say that we can forgive, but we must not forget. We must grow and learn from the past.
You talk a lot about the need to create a kind of neutral citizenship idea, one that is divorced or at least separated from confessionalism. Is that really achievable, though? It sounds very utopian.
I don't think we can divorce ourselves from our sense of confessionalism because it's part of the traditional structure of Lebanon. What we can do is create a certain neutrality towards external events around Lebanon. Lebanon's always been prey to divisionary tactics, to people wanting to create problems and separate the different confessions. If the Lebanese can gather around their own identity as Lebanese and deal with their issues as citizens, then that's a whole different question altogether.
Do you not feel more pessimistic about the prospect of that happening, given the Syrian war and this flow of refugees into Lebanon?
I think we're at the edge of a precipice here, and it can go both ways. But because we've had the experience of war, we're somehow ahead of all the other countries that are today plunging into war. We know that war isn't a solution. We know that no community can ethnically ever erase the other. So we have to coexist. We have to find a way to cooperate and to talk to each other and to resolve our problems internally through dialogue.
There's still a fatigue, obviously, from the civil war, to put it mildly. So you think that will kind of stop a return to that level of conflict from 1975 to 90?
I think that is today what is stopping it, is the memory of the war. But what's scary is the next generation, the new generations who never lived that experience of war and hatred and division and horror, and who today are being instigated towards carrying arms and fighting and becoming more militant. And this book is sort of destined to their readership, because I want them to understand that war is not a solution.
Can you make that point, not in a book, but in a more classic political context, because you are the president of the Liberal Democrats in Lebanon?
This is why we also created the party, to provide a viable alternative, to talk about what a modern Lebanon would look like. What would it mean if we Lebanese decided all to get together and to create a nation, and to value our citizenship, our Lebanesehood, above our confessional divisions?
You have a few ideas here which are interesting. For example, setting up a non-confessional lower house and a sort of watchdog upper house that would be more confessional. But again, it's very hard to imagine how that could really happen.
It's actually part of the Constitution, as part of the revisions that were proposed during the Taif, I suppose, conference at the time when they rewrote the Lebanese Constitution. It is possible. I think that you cannot deny the confessional nature of Lebanon. You have to really accept and honor the diversity. That would be the key. It's not to actually say that Lebanon is not traditionalist in the sense that it has religious communities, but to honor the difference of each of those communities and to have them talk and coexist together.
You also write a lot about clientelism. Is it difficult to make an impact when you yourself are from a political dynasty? I mean, one has the impression that you can only make progress in Lebanon if you come from a name that's a brand.
This is true today, and this needs to change. It needs to become a platform that's open to a lot of people. There are wonderful people in Lebanon with great political ideas, and everybody should be able to compete equally on the political scene. The problem is that you have this very traditionalist, feudal, patriarchal system today that is in place. But there's also a lot of people who are willing to come forward, and a lot more women are willing to come forward and hopefully participate in the elections and change the profile of the electorate in Lebanon.
So your priority then is now, what are you focusing on? The parliamentary elections?
Yes, I'd like to. I mean, I hope hopefully there will be elections. Right now, there's not even an electoral law that anybody can agree upon. There's not even a government, and much less elections. So hopefully we will have all three not too far in the future.
And what's I mean, how do you see the Liberal Democrats fitting into the sort of the picture of political forces in Lebanon?
The Liberal Democrats is nothing. I mean, the party that I created is new, but at the same time, it's built on the principles that my grandfather had set forward, which was a party that accepts and invites the participation of all the different religions. And it's a meritocracy. It's a party that has an idea of the future that is built on citizenship, on the law, on creating one law for all Lebanese. Lebanese people tend to think that they're all above the law, but really, it's very important that we all abide to the law.
Have you had any success success in attracting a sort of balance of people from different communities then so far?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we are, as a party, our distribution is nationwide, and we have people who are interested in joining us from all different confessions.
So would you think that would make you different from any other party that, correct me if I'm wrong, that is basically based on a community that is
Yes.
Christian or Druze or something else?
Any party that today is fundamentalist or extremist or segregationist or partitionist certainly would not be in the same line of thought.
And who's the main target for attracting people to this idea of a kind of neutral citizen idea? Is it young people in Lebanon? What kind of ages are we talking about?
I think it's everybody. Everybody realizes that the only future that we can have is a future that is shared, a future that we have in common. So we have to create a dialogue of moderation and move away from any extremist thinking that's going to segregate or partition.
Okay, we'll have to end it there. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being on the interview. Tracy Chamoun, author of The Blood of Peace. That's all for this edition of The Interview here on France 24. Thanks for watching.